Wait. Zoro and Brook are about to save Elbaf from Emu? Now, let me be clear here. These two have been up to something for quite a while now on the island, and while Zoro's been flying under the radar, kind of sneakily I think, it's pretty clear that Brook at the very least is about to make some big power moves. But I believe that between the two of them, the tides of danger consuming Elbaf right now are about to shift massively. I kind of think that Zoro's actually the character that I want to get into first here because, quite frankly, man, I wasn't ready for this absolute beast line drop at the end of chapter 1172 because Zoro confidently looking at two raging demon giants and going, "I've got a plan, don't worry about it," is kind of just the most anxiety-inducing thing I've read in One Piece recently. Oh, well, you thought I was gonna say it was hype or crazy insane? I mean, yeah, sure, kind of that too, and I'm absolutely pumped for it, don't get me wrong, but like, does this not fill you with absolute dread? Zoro is great at many things, like almost all the things, but one thing that he's not exactly is a mastermind planner. May I remind you, cutting off his own legs, fighting Mihawk right at the beginning of the story. I mean, I wouldn't say wits are his strong suit, right? The dude's primary problem-solving method is confrontation, normally in the form of a swift chop, a slash, a dice, or really any other fancy sword move that you can think of. Now, especially at this point in the story, the dude's combat knowledge is pretty much elite, like the moment he has Law teleports him to counter Kaido's strike from above, is to this day and will forever be drilled inside of my brain. And so I know, of course, that if Zoro's about to unleash some crazy sword shenanigans, I would trust his plan. But I gotta say, I don't know, man. This doesn't really feel like it's gonna be that. It kind of feels more like Zoro might accidentally like do a crazy amount of damage with a really dumb strategy, and it kind of makes me really anxious and a little bit sick to the stomach. So let's work together here and try and figure out Zoro's big strategy before I end up spending the next week in the bathroom with those anxiety runs, because those are gonna be killing me and I keep having them. So let's get rid of them. A big order of business, I think, is establishing what Zoro actually knows about the current situation in Elbaf altogether. I mean, he's kind of caught up on what's going on top, right? So he knows the enemies he's fighting. Shout out to my man Scopper Gabon, by the way, for giving the squad their combat briefing, on the way. Like, honestly, that was a really sick moment for me too, personally, because it really feels like at any moment now, an all-out mega clash is about to happen. Oda really crushed it on hyping up and building up the hype this chapter overall. I'm like ready for whatever's about to go. Anyways, Zoro's locked in, right? He knows about the Domi Reversi, it seems. He knows what counters it. And he also recently, like, we're talking within the last 10-15 minutes within the story, just learned that he actually has Conqueror's Haki. I don't know about you, I kind of feel like we all moved past that one real quick since we had already known that Zoro was a Conqueror, right? Since Wano, basically. But this is gonna be the first fight that he knows about his true power, kind of like I'm very hyped about Luffy for the first time fighting, actually knowing he has a Zone and Nika type fruit, and not basically being completely in the dark about his own devil fruit like he is right now. So I really wouldn't be too surprised if this is just the entire center of his plan. Zoro might just be very straightforward with it, ripping his Conqueror's Haki, Tiger Hunt, or Dead Man's Game, I don't know, to try and defeat the demonized Dorian Broggy. Looking back at Elbaf so far, this kind of feels like a very likely outcome, I hope you agree, because I went back and reread some key Zoro moments from this very arc so far, and I kind of just really overlooked that Zoro is itching to fight this entire arc so far. There have been like several panels so far, like when he met Loki, when he met Scopper, like pretty much anytime any tiny problem has been proposed, where Zoro just goes, "You want me to cut it down? I can cut it down. Please, just let me cut it down. I'm ready to cut something up." Kind of like his entire vibe. And honestly, I can't really imagine that throwing him into a mosh pit with the captains of the giant warrior pirates is a great idea, considering he's already been a little bit, let's say, trigger happy this arc. Well, I mean, swords have no triggers, so he was sheath happy, pummel happy. I don't know, man. I'm a little bit tired and my neck hurts because I did something weird to this, like, I don't know, I sat down and I was trying to just like bend down and get a cup, and then like my neck just going like, I don't know, I'm getting old, I guess, but yeah, my neck's fucked up. So where were we? All right, yes, Zoro. So we might just get a little bit of a callback to Dressrosa here, I think, where Zoro, of course, has Hajrudin throw him at Dorian Broggy so that he can, and I'm gonna quote him there, "fly through the air and cut them down." I mean, it does kind of make sense. The giants are probably a similar size to Pika at this point, right? Considering that Imu's Domi Reversi buff makes everything look so much bigger, compared to the other regular giants who are also already massive, but maybe that's just a classic case of Oda not really caring about scale. Who knows? And if this is Zoro's actual plan, I would argue it almost feels destined to fail, because while Zoro is very strong, yes, Oda has made it very clear that with characters like Zoro and Luffy, they need just a little bit of extra time to actually accomplish these intentional and crazy Haki level ups, and I'm very confident that by the end of a potential Dory and Broggy versus Zoro fight, Zoro would be in control of his Conqueror's infusion, but odds are I think that he'd strike out at first really hard. Now listen, you can agree or disagree with the point here, but let me just tell you what I think. For me, like, we had now so many arcs where it was just about Luffy mastering his Haki. Obviously, there was the entire time skip where Zoro was still doing, he learned Haki, but he was still focusing on swords techniques and other stuff, stamina. Luffy, meanwhile, spent 2 years doing nothing but learning Haki and having like a full crash course about Conqueror's Haki from the king, the Dark King himself, who, is part of the pirate crew where now Scopper is a part from, that like taught Luffy and Zoro about them using Conqueror's Haki against Domi Reversi to begin with. So Luffy had that full kind of 2 years ahead of Zoro. Then we had, Dressrosa where it started, but then really got into it with Whole Cake Island, where Luffy needed to learn and master his observation Haki, like Future Sight. And then all of Wano was, Luffy grinding really hard to learn his advanced armament, and then in his crazy fight with Kaido, having to fight an Emperor of the Sea, he needed to be able to actually properly learn his advanced Conqueror's Haki. So I don't know, it just feels a little bit wrong that Zoro would just out of nowhere suddenly be able to master all of it in seconds after he even learned about having it. Then again, I guess you could make the counterpoint that Zoro has always been very quick to pick up on armament Haki stuff and just had a lot of crazy Haki feats even probably before the time skip when he, was fighting Mr. One. And you could even make the argument that some of the sword stuff that Zoro had going on maybe even hinted at him using Haki unintentionally, right? Like a long time before all of the other Straw Hats ever had a real Haki moment, like, Luffy using his Conqueror's Haki unintentionally early during Marineford, during Amazon Lily, like all these things. So I guess you could make that point, but I hope you know what I mean. It would be weird if he just jumps into the fight, perfect control of Conqueror's Haki, just awakens his advanced version of it right away, starts infusing his sword with some crazy stuff. I would love to see it. I just feel like it would be more natural to have a little build up to it, but maybe not, and maybe that works out fine. We'll see. And honestly, even if it does happen, I think it's okay, because I actually don't really think that that's his plan right now. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here because I do think that Zoro's aware of one key flaw with Dory and Broggy that Imo actually doesn't know about, and he's gonna use that to table the turns. Because just like Imo, Zoro has a history with the giants, these giants in particular, because Little Garden has happened, he knows their ethics, morals, and hell, Zoro and Broggy had one of the most bro interactions when they were ready to cut their bodies apart to crush Mr. 3. I'm just rereading right now the entire story in Japanese recently, which has been crazy fun, by the way. I'm finding so many little details and looking at every single panel in Skypiea and, Alabasta, and finding these little so much cool stuff I got coming up. But anyways, reading Little Garden also was insanely cool, where we recently talked in this video about, the war god Elbaf, who's probably a different god than Nika, a different character, Loki's ancestor maybe, so a lot of cool stuff, and rereading Little Garden has been a blast. My point being though, if there is anyone who understands what is at the core of these big warriors' hearts, it's gonna be Zoro. And we've learned through both Zebek and Herald that when Imu compels people, the original will of the person is in there, it's just tainted and manipulated, right? But I also think it's likely that it can be appealed in a couple of ways too. For example, Hajrudin warned Zoro not to get in the middle of Dory and Broggy, and I would guess that that's because of all their named attacks revolving around pinching opponents. Though I will admit, it could also be that Scopper warned them about a very small, easily missed part of chapter 1150, which is that it seems like people who stand on the ground in between Dory and Broggy kind of like in the game Reversi, might also be getting Domi Reversied. I would argue this is fairly likely what was actually being warned about here, but it's not been explicitly stated yet, so I wanted to toss out the other option too. Either way, we can agree that being in the middle of them is literally the most dangerous spot, regardless of the weird demon magic, but because Hajruden was probably raised hearing about the legendary attacks known as the Hakoku, Taionoko, and Svalin, all the crazy things that they can pull off. Now, add on the fact that people might become demons in between, that's a recipe for disaster. Which is actually exactly why I can totally see Zoro intentionally getting in between them, essentially challenging their warrior pride head on. And if Zoro's main goal is to distract the demon boys and keep the innocent people of the island safe, then this kind of feels like a very straightforward Zoro-like way to do so. Now, is that a good idea? No, absolutely not. These boys are beasts, and I can't imagine it would be a great idea to actively try and tank their attacks or risk being turned into Domi Reversi Zoro, as much as I want to see a real King of Hell Zoro awakening, but it is Zoro that we're talking about, and maybe nothing will happen on Elbaf either. Who knows? And I don't know, maybe we're just overthinking it too. It might not even be that complicated. I mean, Zoro might just yell at them and challenge them 2-on-2 with Hajruden, also trying to appeal to the warrior spirit and the pride of Elbaf, the war god that these boys follow, right? They respect the challenge, and we do know that for a fact, at their core, they will see a fight through until the end. I mean, they still technically aren't even actually done with their original battle from Little Garden. In case you missed this, we actually found out in chapter 1126 that they just put it basically on hold to go get new weapons from Elbaf, and then all the Egghead stuff happened, so they just took off and decided to save Luffy in between. And I just want to point out, by the way, that obviously out of all the people that we've met and all the countries we've been to in One Piece, and so many people being loyal and great friends and allies to Luffy, the Giants are just the biggest crew of homies you could possibly ever want. Can we just agree on that? Like, they put aside all of their issues, everything that's going on, and we're like, no, yeah, my friend Luffy is in trouble. Our stuff doesn't matter. We're gonna be there for him. We're gonna fight for him. It's all about honor and, you know, like the pride of being a brave warrior. Again, all the Usopp stuff. We're gonna get into Usopp. Ooh, I have a separate big video on Usopp coming on Tuesday, so don't worry, didn't forget about his great moment. You know, that's gonna come out in 2 days. Keep an eye for that too, so just in case you're worrying why it's not in this video. But yeah, with the Giants here, I think no matter how much Imo has like twisted their minds and like is controlling their hearts with Domi Reversi, I would absolutely be shocked if not at their core this like brave warrior essence, this loyal, you know, like Viking spirit is still alive. That just feels like the logical thing, and I think it might just be the weak spot that Imo is overlooking once again, just how he kind of overlooked it with Harold, who, even though he was arguably even closer tied to Imo with the Covenant, right? Like, Imo had direct control over him without having to Domi Reversi him at all. Even then, Harold was still able to, you know, break that spell temporarily at least and ask Loki to free him, to kill him. Like, again, I think something like that is gonna happen here too. But I gotta say, actually, like, thinking about this a little bit more and more, I kind of think that Zoro's plan has a chance to accidentally be really clever here. And I thought about this option when I first read everything and was actually quite excited to see that some other people online were kind of thinking along the same lines. Now, was I just a little bit disappointed because that means some of you have already read this idea? Sure, a little bit, but I still want to talk about it because it's just so fitting and would be so cool if it were to be true, because my gut feeling is telling me that Zoro's plan might straight up come from a little book we have in the real world known as The Art of War. In case you don't know about it, this is a book that I would actually say, despite being very old, absolutely worth reading. It's a book about deception, manipulation, and creating chaos within your enemy's structure. It was actually a book written to explain to nobles what goes on in a general's mind during an era where average people ended up leading armies, and they sort of needed a little bit of a playbook. And Oda seemed to be going straight for a classic Sun Tzu strategy with Zoro, turning your enemies on each other. Again, Zoro is actually in a really unique position with Dorian Broggy, since he knows that they were fighting for over 100 years together on Little Garden. He knows that these two new commanders were fighting over who caught a bigger fish. I think that Zoro plans to manipulate the two giants into some sort of internal conflict, where instead of fighting together, they'll actually temporarily end up fighting each other until Imu locks back in and sets them back on their path to kill Jarul. That, or honestly, Zoro might just cut the whole dang tree branch that they're on down, like sending Dorian Broggy into the underworld instead for the time being while everyone deals with the Holy Knights up here. It seems crazy, it seems impossible, but a giant tree branch is like exactly the type of crazy power scaling feat that Zoro would bust out right now here on Elbaf, just to be like, hey, you guys can do this, I can do this too. Otherwise, I might just be lacking the fantasy really here to come up with what else Zoro might be planning. If you have good ideas, please let me know in the comments. I'd love to read it. I mean, obviously, it would be very fun to see Zoro bust out like a new power or, you know, doing something that we haven't seen yet, but that doesn't really sound like a plan. Because really, for Zoro, a plan should always revolve around cutting down something. So maybe he's gonna try and destroy the ship before they can, you know, put the children on there and like cut off their escape route, something like that. But I honestly just think that the chaos is much more likely here, at least opposed to the tree branch cutting, and just tanking a terrifying wombo combo from Dorian Broggy to really put Zoro up there in the top brass. And funnily enough, it might actually connect really well to what I think that Brook is actually up to right now too. Let's talk a little bit about our Holy Knight boy. I'll be straight up with you, I am feasting with all the crazy Brook stuff happening in Elbaf. Now, does it feel sort of weird? Absolutely. Why is Brook, out of all people, getting a massive spotlight when this arc feels like it was built for Usopp or someone else? No idea, but that's a question for another day and not really my problem right now. Right now, we need to really key in on how Brook might save the entire One Piece planet because of his connections to Gonko and all of the Holy Knights. First off, somehow, despite all the other Straw Hats having been captured, Brook managed to escape, or at least that's what Jinbei said. My guess is that his bones and soul stuff put him in a very unique position to slip out of the arrows, which is actually a really clever thing from Oda, because I feel like most manga authors would just have a character with Brook's power remain captured for the sake of the story. But to me, Brook being able to like escape this is actually a really nice touch and might actually come in very clutch as well. That rhymed for no reason, sorry. And I say that because Brook seems to have realized who Gonko is, you know, that thing that got set up before the Big Rocks flashback. And while we eagerly are still awaiting to see the truth behind their real relationship, all the information we have gleaned so far might just give us enough to reveal Brook's big scheme to save his daughter, or at least daughter figure. I like to think daughter, but we'll find out. I still really haven't locked in for sure on what the nature of their relationship really is, but we do know one key part of it. It's the same thing we know shaped Brook's entire character, honestly. Music is the most important thing, and I do believe it's partially the key to defeating Emu themselves. All right, how do I say this? I gotta be real with you, I've been sitting on a really interesting theory video for a long time now, like a couple of months, about music and One Piece specifically. And there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm like almost really confident in, and other parts that I am super confident in, but one part of which I just can't sit on any longer and wanted to bring up right now because I really haven't found a good timing to release this video, and I'm like kind of a little bit scared it's gonna get outdated, so I'm gonna throw it out right here. At this point in the story, it's more than clear that music is the manifestation of freedom in the story. Things like the drums of liberation, Bing Sake, the golden bell on Shandora, and little things like Luffy wanting a musician more than any other crew member. There are literally big, massive parties of music, booze, and food at the end of every single arc. And don't think I forgot that Gunko's name literally can translate to war drum and is Emu's vessel too. So to me, it just makes a whole lot of sense that Emu's whole vibe is silence, because if music is joy and freedom, silence is control and oppression. When you silence the music and laughter, you cut off the freedom and connection between people, and in my mind, that is what Emu is all about. Emu wants silence. Emu wants secrecy and control, and this is just a core aspect of their character, and Brook, for some reason, seems to have the ability to break that silence inside of Gunko's mind specifically. As for that whole music theory video specifically, if you want to actually see this and want me to put this out next Thursday maybe instead of the regular video, just leave me a guitar emoji in the comments, and, you know, I will know, depending on how much of you do it, whether I want to put it out or not, I guess. Because again, there's just so much to talk about, like, you know, Brook's connection with the music and soul. We have the bell in Shandora that's connected to the souls of the ancestors, and the bell calls forth the soul of the ancestors who are passed on, and like so many, like the song of the whales and all, infinite things, infinite stuff with the soul and the underworld and music, and it's crazy. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna save it for that video. And this all really makes me think that Brook might have escaped to simply get his guitar or his violin. I mean, we do know that Gunko wanted to enslave Brook specifically because she loves his funky, fresh beat even when she did not remember that they actually had a real relationship. And if Brook has finally realized who Gunko is, or, you know, whatever her original name actually was when they knew each other, then I think it's just logical to assume that he's gonna get his guitar to hit on that classic trope of a song that breaks the trance, right? It's sort of the universally agreed on thing with mind-controlled characters in all of media where a song or a voice that's familiar is used to break through the silence, since people form such a deep emotional attachment to music, again connecting it to the soul, and Imu's doing some crazy soul trading devil stuff, right? Sound is a key aspect of the brain that is linked to memory, just like scent, by the way. It's one of those weird things that just like works really well, you know, which is why I think that Brook might just literally start singing Bing Sake or a lullaby or any song of the Soul King's latest EP or something that connects him directly to Gunko, like that he was singing to her when she was a kid, just to distract and connect to Gunko. And if that way Gunko gets back in control and actually regains her memories that Imu has very clearly been suppressing, you know, like we saw actually with the Herald flashback, there may be an opportunity to get Imu out of her. And then they just have to, I don't know, pull her shanks and cut off her arm so they can save her. You know, nothing too crazy. Just cut off that poor girl's arm. Hopefully there's another way to get rid of that tattoo. Actually, how insane would it be if that was also Zoro's plan? Just like, hey, I remember Red Hair Shanks having one arm because Mihawk told me that. What if we just cut off the Emo Vessel's arm? That should remove the Holy Knight mark. Now, do I doubt that this is Zoro's plan? Yes. But it might actually be Oda's plan, especially if Brook knows something about the Abyss and the Holy Knights. I mean, you can learn a lot more about my thoughts on that in my Blade of God Brook video I made, since I don't think I need to rehash all the crazy stuff that makes it really likely to me that Brook has a Maurizioa-based past, but it's all in there. Go check that out later if you want to. So there's likely a chance that Brook is on the run to maybe like destroy the Abyss Circle too, cutting off the Holy Knight's escape route. Let's just fixate on that for just a moment before circling back to the music stuff, because seriously, I think that there is a lot of potential for Brook to not do here what we all obviously expect him to do. Generally speaking, a lot of theorists about One Piece, myself included of course, tend to really focus on the music angle because it's pretty big and flashy and obvious with Brook, but Brook's potential as a former Holy Knight or Blade of God or whatever his role was with Gunko puts him in a crazy unique spot, I think. He could very well have relationships with someone like Summer or even Imu themselves, and they just do not recognize him because he's now a skeleton. One of my favorite ideas I've had in the last few months was that Brook's Holy Knight mark just sort of melted off his flesh when he died and decomposed, and he was operating in this sort of Shanks-like state where he never got a tier 2 covenant, so the threat of Imu wasn't too apparent for him. And if Brook did escape the Holy Knights, the dude might just straight up reveal that out loud at this point. Because if there's anything we've now learned about Imu from God Valley, the Reverie, and really just any moment we've seen them, they do not like loose ends. They erased Lulucia trying to get Sabo, they reveled in their torture of Zebek after he confronted them in the flower room, and clearly they're still really hung up on Lily, betraying them by spreading the poneglyphs. So what if Brook's big move is just becoming the center of attention? I mean, I can just kind of imagine it pretty clearly. Brook gets one of those big Albath horns and calls out, "Imu, I am the Soul King Brook of the Straw Hat Pirates, but I wasn't always known by this name," and then reveals his past, and then Summers and Imu just lose it, and Brook is like, "Also show me your panties," or like, I don't know, maybe both of them just get like slightly annoyed, and it draws enough attention away that Luffy, Loki, and Zoro can unleash some big crazy move that changes the course of this battle. Now, if this is what Oda chooses to do with Brook, well boy, I think we might all in a world of big hurt, because there's a real chance that Oda kills Brook in that moment. I mean, it seems extreme, but like, Albath is an arc that seems to be designed to establish a huge fall for Luffy in some way, shape, or form, and the loss of a crew member would be about as big as it gets. Brook having a clear history with Marijoa potentially might make him the perfect candidate for a big Straw Hat loss and a serious bump up for how evil Imu is in Luffy's eyes specifically. It could of course also potentially pave the way for Loki onto the crew and make for a really messy situation that some crew members, you know, resent him joining because they just lost Brook and he just immediately subbed in. I gotta say, I could see Oda going down that path, and I'd definitely be a little bit torn if he did so, but at the same time, I mean, would it be pretty crazy good? Like, would it make the story insanely good? Yeah. The heartbreaking moments are what always make One Piece the best. That's why I've advocated for Usopp dying, but it could be Brook too. I know, not a very popular opinion to kill off a Straw Hat, but I think it would just hit really, really crazy hard. Now, if you hate the thought of Brook dying, don't worry. I think the biggest argument against this happening is that him and Laboon have not reunited yet, so that kind of makes it unlikely, but it could also be a situation where Brook at some point later in the story comes back because of his, you know, Yomi powers. Maybe there's something crazy going on with that, or, you know, maybe Brook actually can still tap into his own Abyss powers if he actually used to have a mark and a contract with Imu, so maybe even though he's already died twice, he can just, you know, regenerate that way. That could be pretty cool too. So I guess there are ways to make this happen without killing Brook off for good, but it could definitely be a moment where it seems like he's just been utterly destroyed. And since I can see that you're a little bit uncomfortable with this idea, I don't want to stay in the dark territory of Double That Brook anymore. It's kind of making me want to cry a little bit. So let's cover another quick idea here, which is that maybe, as I alluded to earlier, his goal is actually to find and temper with the Abyss Circles. We do know that they're essential for travel, but maybe they also serve as a sort of anchor for when the Holy Knights travel, and Brook is able to boot them back to Marijoa that way. I think that could be a pretty, like, refreshing change of pace for a moment there, because actually seeing Brook do something that messes with their entire power system because he has some inside knowledge could kind of be really cool. I mean, obviously, you know, Oda could go the other way and just suddenly scale Brook up, and Brook was like, oh, I had these crazy hell Abyss powers all this time, but like, I didn't want to use them, like, to not draw attention to me, but now I mean, that would be cool too, but just Brook doing something within, you know, the realm of the powers, Imu, Oda has established for him, and then that way messing with the Holy Knights and Imu could be pretty nice. But now I quickly also want to circle back again to the music stuff, because there was actually a really metal idea I had that, you know, I was thinking you guys might want to hear. Maybe? Yeah? Okay, fine, I'll tell you, but you've gotta keep it a secret. If you tell everybody, then they're gonna talk about it, and someone on Reddit will write an angry thread about me, and then I'll lose my street cred again, and then I'll have to get a new job, and it's gonna be a whole ordeal, which means I'll have to get the government involved because of visa stuff here in Japan, and quite frankly, I don't want to deal with all of that. So you need to keep this next point about Brook in One Piece secret. It's a slippery slope these days, you never know what'll happen. What if Brook's top-tier genius maneuver is to create a moment of such insane emotion inside Gunko that it snaps her out of Imu's control, and to do that, he gives up something that means everything to him, something that Gunko, regardless of if it's the spirit inside of her or the post-mind-washed Holy Knight version, would be absolutely pissed about. I think there's a serious chance that we will get a sick double spread in like 3 or 4 chapters from now where Brook breaks his guitar, essentially offering to give up his music so that she can be free. A massive symbolic gesture that would appeal to young Gunko's love and care for Brook, since he always said that he wanted to be a little music pirate boy, and also simultaneously enraging adult Gunko, because that means there will be no more Soul King music, which we know she loves. That would be like the perfect double whammy to snap Gunko out of it, even if just for a moment, to help save the giants in Elbaf. I mean, ideally, I just like totally save Gunko as well, and she'd be all good, right? I mean, honestly, it could make for a really emotional moment where, like, you know, her memories come all flashing back and she recognizes Brook and starts crying, like kind of like the famous Nami scene in Arlong Park, or like Robin scene on Enna's Lobby, where suddenly like everything comes flashing back and she realizes what situation she's in and seeing Brook and everything, and then at the next moment being like shocked that he's dead and a skeleton, but then he's like, no, we're all good, yo ho 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 ho. Like, I'm actually still alive. It could make for something really emotional, and I personally wouldn't really mind seeing Gunko like at least traveling with the crew for a little bit. Don't worry, I don't necessarily want her to become a Straw Hat. I don't think I can say that because I want everyone to be a Straw Hat. I'm like a very big person on new Straw Hats, and we've been getting none of them recently, except for Jinbei, who doesn't really count, so but it would be nice, you know, like seeing that Gunko actually seems to be a nice person deep down, and just seeing her maybe interacting with the crew and having inside knowledge that she might be able to pass on to the crew. Would be so sweet. Also, just to bring it up, I'm still very curious about what her face actually looks like. Like, is Oda hiding her face because there's something weird with her mouth? Or is it that she looks like someone that we might recognize otherwise and Oda just doesn't want to spoil it? Very curious. Though I will admit that I'm a little bit doubtful that Gunko would be fully unshackled here, even if the moment would be absolutely beautiful, because it kind of feels like Gunko's full character arc is gonna be spread out here a little bit so we can get a really big payoff moment later down the line at a much more pivotal and crucial moment. Maybe up in Marijoa, maybe, you know, like closer to Laugh Tale, who knows. But to be completely fair, this seems like a pretty crucial one right now, so maybe Gunko is just another character like Lilith, Bonnie, Stussy, that's gonna have a big character arc in their one arc and then rally with the crew for a while afterwards. Well, I mean, I guess technically Stussy may or may not be alive. We don't really know yet, but you get the point. All right, so that's what I think is up with Brook. What his plan might be, who he could save, and what it might cost him as well. But I've got to admit, man, there's another thing from chapter 1172 that I need to talk about for a moment. Jarul. Okay, look. I'll be honest with you guys, I do try to keep my videos in the very positive vibes territory. I don't like to dunk on things, I don't often do a critical theory review, and I genuinely like to have good thoughts on the story, which, you know, 99% of the time is so easy because Oda is just writing the most amazing story ever. Just by nature, I'm a very big One Piece fanboy, I am somewhat of an Oda apologist, and sure, I get personally annoyed with a chapter here or there for like something minor, but it's never something that really gets under my skin so bad that I need to like put out a rant video, which I'm not even sure, like probably most of you don't even want to hear me rant about it. But I'm very sorry, today with this chapter, I do need to rant a little bit. Right now, that's why I saved it for last, so if you don't want to hear me rant about One Piece in any way or form, like, you can turn it off right now, but I need to rant about stupid Jarul. As you know, my evil Jarul agenda I had at the beginning of this arc was already crushed, but this just takes the disappointing cake man with everything. I just don't get it. Like, why did he all of a sudden just now decide, okay, I can just go, you know, go tell everyone that Loki's a good guy, actually. Does he have some, like, nasty observation hockey and just realizes Loki is free and ready to do his thing on his way up, and, you know, that Luffy knows everything? If so, apparently Jarul's uber nasty with it for some reason that we haven't been explained yet, because what was the whole freaking point of keeping everything a secret if you were just gonna fold and scream it out right away anyways? Like, look, okay, I get it. This is supposed to be a cool moment where Jarul exposes the truth he's been hiding, rallies the giants, sets up for Loki's arrival and everything, and declares war on the world government, which I want to point out is a really big deal. Only 2 characters in the modern era have done that, and those are Luffy and Dragon. It is very important and a big thing that a country, especially a country like Elbaf, is officially declaring war against the government. But why in the world not just reveal the Loki thing earlier? What was the actual logical point of everything here? Was it to respect Loki's desire to keep Harold's secret demon mode and like him selling out Elbaf private? Was it to protect the image of peace that he wanted? I mean, sure, cool, whatever. It's an okay reason, I guess. And it's nice now because, like, cool, Elbaf finally realized how they can still be warriors and fight for peace instead of for fun, but, like, they already realized that. I mean, most of them at least. I just can't see a world where it made more sense to not just reveal that straight up and have Loki rule Elbaf as this badass warrior king, as Harold wanted it to also happen. A king so strong that it prevents Emu from literally invading the country until now. I don't know what to say. It kind of feels a little bit lazy. It feels like Oda just really wanted to make Loki feel cool and evil at first as like a little bait and switch moment, which, let's be real, we all kind of looked through immediately, and is kind of now fumbling the landing a little bit because it's being unwritten super easily in the current storyline, and we got all the context with the rock stuff, so I guess no need to justify it. Like, everyone's just chill with Loki now, despite villainizing him his entire life. Like, I just need at least one background giant somewhere who goes like, yeah, it's cool that he killed his dad for a good reason and all, but he's still kind of a dick. Like, I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like Oda is usually so good at tying in loose threats and, like, having things pay off, so I have extremely high standards for him. If this was any other story, I'd just be like, whatever. This is just, this is how people write things. Stuff gets forgotten. Stuff gets, like, quickly wrapped up if it's, not fitting in the story vibe. But it's Oda, who's the absolute legend, who's planning out things freaking, like, 1,000 chapters in advance. And you can tell me that he wasn't able to, like, justify this a little bit better, or at least wait for Loki to do something where Jarul sees him and is like, oh, I see that Loki is now free and willing to do stuff. That means I can now finally tell everyone what's happening. Like, wouldn't it have made more sense if Loki arrives, starts doing something, all the giants are like, oh no, he's here! Like, how did he escape? He's gonna kill us all. And then Jarul is like, haha, I see you finally decided to follow your destiny. Now I'm gonna tell everyone what's up. And then everyone is like, oh my god, he was, like, you get it. But, I mean, I guess whatever. It's fine. I'm fine. Odds are Oda's gonna pull a move where Loki had to stay imprisoned or else Emo was gonna attack or do something. And so by keeping him at bay and also keeping the giants peaceful, Emo was, wasn't gonna meddle with Elbaf's affair, or Loki was just pretending to be chained up or something. Which, to be completely honest, at least made me connect some dots I've personally been missing, but you guys might have caught on a little bit earlier. Because I think that Shanks may have gone to get Loki because Emo was getting closer to making another move on Elbaf, and so Shanks knew that Elbaf was essential for the big plan for Emu, and needed Loki back home to protect the island. Like, his presence alone may have been keeping Emu at bay based on the convo they had with the Gorosei in chapter 1171. About how it's absolutely crazy that someone could kill a Holy Knight, and not just any Holy Knight, a tier 2 demonified herald, being guided by Emu. But then, of course, now in the story, Nika Luffy has unleashed and Emu needed to make a crazy play and try to recruit or at least kill Loki. Maybe Loki was the pirate that Shanks/Shamrock were talking about to the Gorosei. That infamous scene with the cloaked figure talking about that pirate. Maybe it was more of a situation where Shanks snuck in and went, hey, this is the guy who killed Harold, by the way. He's really strong. Go after him if you want. Or don't, and that was kind of trying to push Emu into making a risky play there. I don't know, Shanks' plans are something I still have a lot of thoughts on too, and if you want to hear them and really deep dive into everything crazy there's to go over with Red Hair Shanks and the Yonko here, which I gotta say, recently we've known so much more about him and so much cool things we can puzzle together, you can check that video out right here. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Thanks to our fantastic Patreons right here. You guys really, really make a big difference, on allowing us to do what we do here. We have a lot of cool stuff there. Thank you so much. It really means the world if you want to go check that out. Link in the description below, and I'll see you in the next video on Tuesday.